The Greatest Commands is a song they sing every year. That's just been kind of the theme that they've taken up, because my brother, when he would lead the devotional, he would always request that song, and so I would always request the song, and so I appreciate that song. It was a happy coincidence. And Johnny and I have talked, and we're going to take just a few moments before I talk about this parenting lesson to tell you about text message. Some of you may remember I was here just a few months ago in February after Yes Weekend, and I was privileged to speak Sunday night, and I gave a brief summary of text message, but I want to do that again because I know there are people here who weren't there that night. Text message is a program that was, as far as I can remember, it was created by Jeff Archie, the minister over at the East Side Church of Christ in Cleveland, Tennessee. He wanted a youth program, and he said, we need to call it text message. About 4 or 5 years ago, that was when the first idea for this program came into be, and things just continuously didn't work out the way that they wanted them to. And of course, as you know, our own Tate Williams from the Bremen Church of Christ here was going to be the host of that program before he tragically passed away. And so what happened after that was they wanted someone in-house to take over the program, and they asked me if I would try my hardest to make it a youth program. And what we did is we made a rule. There would only be, for the first few episodes, only foundation speakers would speak on the program. That was something that I knew Tate would definitely appreciate. He loved foundations. He loved what it stood for. And so we made that rule. We also made the rule that it would only be youth people for just a little while. I wanted to showcase the people that we had found through foundations. And not that there's anything wrong with older speakers, older men speaking, but we have so many young people. I mean, Stephen is about to be 21, but there is no one else who is around my age that I can have my attention held by than when Stephen Aiken is presenting a lesson. And so I wanted Stephen to be a part of the program. I called him and asked him if he would be a part of it. His program is called What's Up With That? The basic premise of that is that he's going to look at different people, maybe people from the Bible. There are so many celebrities in the world that just do so many crazy things. And Stephen will mention one of these situations, and then he'll just say, what's up with that? And he'll go to the Bible and he'll say, what could they have done differently to avoid being in that situation? What maybe do they need to know now? And what can you and I do differently to avoid being in that situation as well? I also have two good friends by the name of Gerald and Jordan Pugh. And their name is spelled P-U-G-H, but they love to sing. They love to get together and sing songs. And I asked them if they would be willing to try to dissect the songs and try to break down what we sing, to understand why God is love and how we can love the Lord with all our heart and soul and mind. And so what they do is they'll take a song just like we just sang, and they'll go to where it's found in Scripture, or they'll find Scriptures that apply to that song, and they will break down that song and help us understand to sing with the Spirit and to sing with the understanding. Because as so many people mentioned, I think even Johnny mentioned it in the prayer this morning, these songs that we've been singing are worship and are a message to us in and of themselves. We can learn from the songs that we sing. What does the song Pierce My Ear mean? Well, it means that back in older times when a servant was free, allowed to go home, if he didn't want to go, if he wanted to stay with his master, he would say, pierce my ear to your door, and I will stay with you forever, for the rest of my life. And what that song means for us as Christians is, God, pierce our ear, and we're going to follow you for the rest of our life. And if we don't understand that, how are we fully praising God? And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted them to have a program where even I could understand some of the stuff that I've been singing a little bit better. And they do a great job there as well. We also have a program that we have just different guest speakers come in on. It's called What It Means to the Teen. That was a program that, from what I understand, Tate had actually come up with. It was a program that he would go to a particular verse in the Bible and say, I've been looking here at 1 Timothy 2:15. And he would just go from there and he would read what it said and he would just continue to give Bible thoughts. And so we try to have several guest speakers give their thoughts on different passages. We also have a program that Thad recently came down, actually the day after we left, we went back home and Thad recorded Take a Moment. And a lot of you know that Tate did a program in his room called Take a Moment. It was a web show, and he would try to look at different things and just dissect them, and Thad has been doing a great job with that program. He did 8 episodes. Those are currently airing right now every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, I think, for y'all. Or 10 Eastern. 10 Eastern, I'm sorry. I don't even know what my own program is. 10 Eastern. And so Thad's done a great job with that. We also have from the Valdosta area, Reese Britton. I don't know if many of you know who Brandon Britton is, but Reese is a very close friend of mine, and he's gotten down to the studio and he's recorded a program called The Message. You know, there's a version of the Bible out right now that's a watered-down version called The Message. It's not a good version to use. It's not going to give you the exact type of closeness as the King James or the ASV or even the New King would give you. It's just a very watered down. And so I wanted Reese to call the program The Message, but actually give us what the real message is and show us what God's message means versus what some people might think. And he's done a great job with that as well. And then the one that we've gotten the most positive feedback for so far, and I know you'll know why when I say the name, Chris Clevenger. Chris Clevenger and I, we get together and we do a program called Conversations with Chris. And the basic idea of it is we don't even look at the camera. Chris and I, we just sit down and we have a conversation. And I'll ask Chris a question of, a very difficult question maybe. Chris, what do I do when a friend I know is going to get an abortion? What do I do when I go to a party with innocent intentions and alcohol is introduced? What do I do when I'm dealing with heartbreak? Stuff that a lot of you teenagers may not want to admit, but you're struggling with. Stuff that you understand that's a real fear for you. And it's a real fear for us when we were teenagers as well. And I'm only just a few months removed from being a teenager. I'm still going through that. I still feel like a teenager. I still act like a teenager a lot. You can ask Miss Beth. Miss Aiken, she definitely understands. I am like a teenager still. And we understand what you're going through because we're still going through it ourselves. And we want to help. And there's a number. Let me find it for you real quick. There's a number for text message that you can actually text us, and you don't even have to give us your name, your number. You just have to text us and say, look, you know what? I'm dealing with something, and I'm really struggling, but I need help. I need you to just maybe talk about this the next time you do a program. And that number is on my Instagram. I need to probably save it in my own phone. There it is. If you want to write it down, it's a toll-free number. It's a Google number. It's this device that Google uses where the phone number goes to an email service, but any one of us at text message can get what you've said. And so if you've got an idea for what's up with that, or conversations with Chris, or a song you'd like to see dissected, you can text this number. It's 423-521-2995. 423-521-2995. Now, when Johnny and I got together and we talked about this event, I had been getting through more and more episodes of text message and going through more episodes. We were getting some traction to it, and I went to GBN and I asked if I could go out and try to get different youth days set up for this, because not very many people know what GBN is if you're not a congregation that supports it. And even if you know what GBN is, you may think it's just a bunch of older preachers wearing suits preaching on the network, and that's all you're going to see, and that there's nothing that offers for a teen audience. While it's not wrong to get up and wear a suit and preach, obviously I wear a suit when I'm preaching from time to time. There's a time and a place to wear a suit. Some teenagers I know of that just say, I just don't think that applies to me. And so we want to give you an idea that there is a program out there that you can watch, and we want to have these types of youth days, and I'm very thankful to the Bremen Church of Christ for giving us an opportunity to come here and focus the theme around text message. I get made fun of a lot at GBN because I have to come up with different puns and different things to say on the program, such as recharge your faith, have the most updated edition of your faith. We all know what those means as far as our phones are concerned. If we need to recharge our phone, we get it at 100%. If I want to update my phone, I'm going to get it the newest version. I always want to have the most updated version of my faith, where my faith is just always seems to be so fresh and so new that I don't cause myself to stumble. But we came together, and I told Johnny, I said, this lesson's going to fool some people when he says the title, because he even called me and he said, are you about to preach on parents, two parents? And I said, no, absolutely not. But the way that it works is parents have one of the toughest jobs, if not the toughest job in the world. They are in charge of snotty, bratty little kids and teenagers. I'm saying it because I was one. At times I still am one. This is not me saying that you are. I'm saying we all are. Your parents wouldn't even admit, when I was your age, I said and did a lot of the same stuff and got in trouble for a lot of the same stuff that you did. And so I want to give us a plan, though, to try to help make their job easier. because it is a very difficult job. I'm not looking forward to the day when I have to look my son or daughter in the eye and tell them, no, you can't go to prom because of the things that prom involves, because I know that'll break their heart possibly. But if I'm going to be a God-fearing Christian, if I'm going to be a God-fearing father and have a God-fearing mother as a wife who's going to take care of my children, they need to know that what we're doing and what parents are doing for you right now and for me as well is they're just trying to help. They're just trying to get you to heaven. They're not trying to, cramp your style, as we used to say. They're not trying to get in your face and make life unfair and no fun whatsoever. They just want you to go to heaven. Because I'll be honest, we went together and had a good time last night. We ate dinner together. But you know what? If we had not done that, if we had gone out and done something wrong, what does it matter on Judgment Day that we all got together last night as a group and went and ate dinner together? It doesn't matter at all. And there's nothing wrong with having fun, but we need to know what the right type of fun is. And I can remember my mom and dad, I would ask to go to certain friends' houses when they were having a party. And they'd say, no, you can't go there. And I would be confused. I would say, well, why aren't you going to let me go? Well, I didn't understand that they knew, some of these friends, they knew who they were, they knew what they were about, and they didn't want me involved in that type of atmosphere. And I'm thankful for that, because to this day, I've never had a drink of alcohol. I've never smoked anything at all when it comes to any type of cigarette or drug. I've never been involved in going all the way with someone I'm not married to. That's never had to be a concern for me, because my parents did their best job, and they did a very good job of making sure that I stayed out of situations where I could be put in that situation. And so when I talk about parents, when we talk about us as children, I want to give you a 4-step plan. I want to give you a plan that if you put into place and you practice it, it will give your parents a much easier job. I promise you the arguing will stop a lot more than it happens, because everyone, raise your hand if you have an argument with your parents from time to time. Everyone's got to raise their hand, because everybody, come on Nick, raise your hand buddy. Everybody has an argument with their parents over something. Maybe they wanted to go to a friend's house. Maybe they wanted to stay at an event and they just didn't get to. Maybe whatever. We're going to have an argument with our parents. And our parents are going to have to understand, we're going to have to understand who's the final authority. My mom and dad. My mom and dad have the final authority to say no, and I have to listen to that. And so we're going to look through this plan right now. The first point, if you want to have a great relationship, the first thing God wanted you to know in His text message to us, if you want to have a great relationship, you need to love your parents. You need to love them. Go with me to John chapter 13 and verse 35. John 13 and verse 35. The Bible says here, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Well, what's Jesus talking about? Go up one more verse to 34. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also have love one to another. If I'm going to love my mom and dad, I need to love them, true or false, as much as Jesus loves me. True. If I'm going to show my mom and dad that I love them and I want to be around them and I want them to know that I love them, I have to love them enough where if need be, I would die for my mom and dad. Absolutely. Jesus loved us enough, I have written in my Bible, maybe you want to write it too, I don't know, to death. We hear it all the time, I love you to death, I love you to death. Jesus meant that. Jesus actually lived that out. He actually came to this earth and loved us so much that He was put to death so that we could go and have an opportunity to be with Him one day when there wasn't a way possible without a blood sacrifice. Jesus said, here am I, send me. Stephen brought up that verse. Jesus' attitude was so much of that, here am I, send me. And so I need to have that same attitude from my mom and dad. You guys do so much for me. You guys have taken care of me since I was a baby. And all I have to do to show you that I love you is love you as much as Jesus loved me, as much as Jesus loves the church. And why is that going to be a big issue to love and show a sign of discipleship? We'll go to 1 Timothy. Because here we're going to see something that if we love our parents, this is going to be a lot easier when this time comes. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 4. Love is something that we need to return in old age. Read with me verse 4. But if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn to first show piety at home, and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. That word requite, that means to return a favor. How many of you, other than people who have jobs and are old enough to be on their own, how many of you here own your own house? Raise your hands if you're not an adult and you own your own house. How many of you own your own car and you're not an adult? You've made all the payments, you've paid it all off, it is yours. Okay? How many of you have purchased every single piece of clothing in your closet and you're not an adult? Okay. Why do you think you have those clothes? If you're driving and you're of an age where you can drive, you have a car, who pays for that? Mom and Dad. Or maybe even Grandma and Grandpa help out, but Mom and Dad are the ones who are taking care of you. Who puts food on the table? Mom and Dad. I can remember a time before I had a job where if I wanted to go to the movies, it wasn't so easy as I'm just going to go to the movies. I had to go and say, Mom, can I borrow $20 to go to the movies? Do you know what my mom would say to me now if I went up to her and said, can I borrow $20 to go to the movies? She'd say, from your bank account, absolutely. You can take that money out of your own bank account. You have a job, you can take care of yourself now. I'm going to give you a great piece of advice and I'm going to help you. Cherish this moment where you don't have to cover a thing. Honestly, a month ago, I was in a car accident. And Megan and I were fine. My girlfriend Megan's here with me today. We were fine. The car wasn't. $5,000 worth of damage, I had to cover $1,000 of that. I'm going to be honest. Do you know how much my mom and dad helped me pay for that? None. Was it a good feeling? Yes. I paid for that to get my car back? Absolutely. Do you think it hurt, though, at the same time? Here's $1,000 that I could use for bills, I could use for gas, I could use for anything else, but I've got to get my car back, and so here's $1,000. My mom and dad covered for everything, and they still cover some things. I'm still living at home, so they'll still put food on the table, but when it comes to buying my own gas, I need to be able to pay for my own gas. If I want to go to the movies, or if I want to go and play putt-putt or do anything, that comes out of my own pocket. So enjoy the moments where you get to go and ask for money rather than having to, well, this is $25. Is it really worth doing this? Should I go and eat dinner at this restaurant or should we go? You know, Megan and I sometimes when we're talking about where we want to go to eat, I'll look at her and say, cheap? She'll say, cheap. And why is that? We're poor. We are broke. We do not have money to go to Red Lobster every single time we want to go to dinner. We just don't. We're not at the point to have a house. I'm not married yet, so I don't have a house yet. My dad has always told me this advice. I'm going to relay it to you. When you get married, when you start a family, do not start out with the intention of, I want to be at the level my parents are at right now. I want to have the house they have, the car they drive, the food that they buy, the places they go, the trips they take. I need to be at that level right now because you're going to be sadly mistaken. Your parents worked tirelessly, and I'm seeing people shaking their heads. The parents here are shaking their heads. They worked tirelessly to get to that point. And for me to think, I'm 25 years old, I'm going to get married or whatever, and I'm automatically going to have a house, I'm automatically going to have a great car, I'm automatically going to be able to do whatever I want is foolish thinking. It is wishful thinking. It's going to get me in a lot of trouble and in a lot of debt. And so please, return that favor in old age, though, because your mom and dad, when they get older, they may not be at a point anymore where they can take care of themselves. You know, my grandparents, as of this time last year, did not live with me. As of this time this year, they live with me. I love my grandma and grandpa. I'm glad that they're in the house with me. It's awesome to get to see them on a daily basis because for most of my life they lived in Arkansas or in Missouri, and now that they're back in the house, I can see them a lot, and I didn't see them a lot growing up, and so I'm glad they're here. But I want to ask you a question. Do you think they're glad that they're there? I can go ahead and tell you they're not. Not that they don't love being with the family. They love us. They love being with us. But they are very much upset that they have to depend on us now to take care of them in certain areas. They don't enjoy that. My grandfather would tell you he's a very proud person. He doesn't like to be told he needs to be taken care of by someone else. And yet, that's at the point that we're at. Maybe it's a nursing home that your mom and dad have to be put in because you just can't take care of them. But we need to be able to say to mom and dad, you raised me for X amount of years. You took care of me. You took care of me and all my needs, and you made sure I had clothing. You made sure I was fed. The least I can do is make sure that now in your older age, I can take care of you. That's just how it goes. And I know one day, as much as it will break my heart to see, if my dad lives to a point where he becomes older and he forgets things and he cannot take care of himself anymore, I'm hopeful that I'm at a point where I can tell him, Dad, no matter what, I got you covered. I got you. Mom, I've got you. I've got your back. You know, Stephen and I, we say, I got your six. That's just what we say to each other. I got your back. And I want to be able to tell my mom and dad, that's my attitude. I've got your six. I've got your back. I'll take care of you. Love requites in old age, and love obeys. John 14 and verse 15, if you love me, keep my commandments. If your parents are God-fearing people, where do you think their rules and regulations are most likely coming from? Hopefully. If your parents are Christians and they want you to get to heaven, they're not going to bring out the Quran or the Satanic Bible to try to tell you how to live your life. They're going to go to the Word of God, the Holy Bible, and they're going to say, this is what it says to do. This is what I'm expecting you to do because it's what God expects me to do, and it's what He expects me to teach you. And so children, we have to be able to understand our parents are not making these rules up as they go along. They're getting them from Scripture. And that's what we ultimately need to realize is if I'm disobeying my parents, I'm disobeying God as well. And that will frustrate God way more than it'll frustrate your parents. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2 was mentioned. Read verse 3 and 4 as well on your own sometime, which even I had never read until Stephen had gone there. And I just read down there while he was finishing up his point. It even more so brings up of why we have that iniquity. We are separated from God when we disobey and when we sin. And when we disobey our parents, we're disobeying God, according to John 14 and verse 15. So the first thing, God's text message, He sent it to you. He said, look, if you want to have a great relationship with your parents, the first thing you need to do is love them. And if you love your parents, number two, it will cause you to honor your parents. This is the next part of the text message. I want you to honor your parents. You know, I think about Exodus 21 and 17, where it says, if you curse your parents, you're going to die. Back in the Bible times, if you were to curse your parents, it was literally, you would be stoned to death if you were to disobey. Now, can you imagine, and I'm just going to use him because I'm looking right at him, if Garrett Aiken were to disobey his mom, who's here today, and we all said, all right, let's go to the back of the building. Everybody get your stones. We got to kill him. That's not the way it is today, thankfully. But back in this time, in Exodus 21, it was that way. It was that serious. And if it was that serious then, do you think God thinks it's not as serious as it was back then? If it was serious enough for your life to be taken from it, God still holds it in that regard. It's just that culture and the law has changed. There's a different punishment for it now. But I'll be honest, the punishment of hellfire would be way worse than being stoned to death. The punishment of an eternal death is way worse than being killed. And that's the punishment now, is if you curse your parents now, if you disobey them now, that'll cause you to go to hell. The next part, respect your parents. Now this is where a lot of people, I lose you. Because you automatically think, of course I respect my mom and dad. I want to actually throw in another word, fear your parents. Fear them. I said both parents. Now, last week we were in Cleveland, Tennessee, and I was privileged to present this lesson, and one thing I said was, moms typically, now maybe in your house it's not this way, maybe dad's the soft one, but and I know in my house with B.J. Clark, and you've seen him, he's not the soft one in the house. My mom is. And if I wanted to do anything growing up, I didn't go to my dad first. See, we'd play this game as children, and parents, you may know this game by now, and you may know it too. I want to go to Stephen's house. I need to ask my mom first. If mom says yes, I can go to dad and use it as leverage and say, Dad, mom said it's okay, because then you put him on the spot. And especially if you're a preacher's kid, because my dad's trying to talk to several people, so you have to go when he's talking to a lot of people, so his mind's kind of preoccupied. And you have to say, Dad, Mom said it's okay if I do this. Okay, I'm just letting you know. Are you okay with that? Sure, son. Hey, sister, it's good to see you. Just be home tonight. Okay, that's how we played it, especially in my house. Mom was the easiest person to go and ask a question to. And you know what? Mom is the one who is just always perceived as, oh, she's so sweet. She's perceived as the sweetest person. Oh, If you want something baked, Mom's the one to go to. Mom is, she'll do anything for you. And yet, so many times, in some households, sadly, this is the only thing I'm going to say to parents, this is the only thing I'm going to focus on you for a moment. So many times, Mom is not the authority figure that she should be. So many times, Mom uses the phrase, wait till your dad gets home. Do you know what? My mom never said that to me. My mom didn't, and admittedly will tell me that she didn't spank me as much as she should have. And she regrets that. And she says now, I wish I'd spanked you more. I don't know whether that's a compliment or whether it's something that I still got a lot to work on. But Mom has told me from time to time, I should have spanked you more. But you know, one thing she never said to me, and I do appreciate her for it, is wait till your dad gets home. I never heard that from Mom. If I did something bad enough where I'd get a spanking from her, I remember it was a Christmas one year. I got in trouble. And Mom spanked me. Then my dad came home and he spanked me. And then right after that, my grandmother and grandfather walked through the door. They heard what I did, and my grandfather spanked me too. I got a measured dose of discipline from 3 different people that day, and I never had a problem with whatever it was that I did that day again, because all of them, I feared all of them that day. Moms need to be just as feared as fathers do. Now, I know it might not be something, I've known some moms who are, my friends' mothers who are just, how can I be so mean to my child? The Bible says you spare the rod, you spoil the child. If you're afraid to give that measured dose, not abuse, that measured dose of discipline, I promise you, there won't be any love lost when they're older and they realize when they have children, wow, this is difficult. And thank you, Mom and Dad. So please, mothers, be as feared as the father, please. And fathers, if you are the one that is not as feared as Mom, be as feared as the mothers. It works both ways. You have to have that common ground where parents, maybe, I know that my mom and dad said when they got married and they found out they were going to have my older brother Daniel, they got together and they said, okay, who's going to handle the discipline in this regard? Who's going to handle the discipline in this regard? What about this? If this happens, how do I handle it? Maybe that's a good way to do it and say, look, we're both going to spank, but maybe it shouldn't just be one parent who spanks all the time. We need to understand that any one of our parents can discipline us, okay? Children, young people, please listen. Any one of your parents today can spank you if you do something that deserves one. And if you don't think that's possible, ask the 17-year-old that got spanked. Because I did something bad enough, Mom said, you know what, that's it. Get to my bedroom. I hadn't heard that in 7 years. But I didn't do whatever it was that, again, because I realized real quick, I'm not too old to be spanked, apparently. We don't grow out of spankings until our parents just decide, okay, I'm just not going to spank him anymore. He is too old for that. Until they decide that, though, don't think you're outgrown, because they could surprise you real quick. So we need to honor our parents in the fact that I'm going to fear both of them. Matthew 15 and verse 4, Mark 10:19, and also Ephesians 6 and 2 also says, honor father and mother. You know, when I think about this plan, the second point of honoring your parents, if you honor your parents, the next text message God sent us as far as if you want to have a perfect, fully charged relationship with your mom and dad, if you love your parents, you'll honor your parents, which will cause you to, number 3, listen to your parents. Listen. This is a big one because, as Johnny mentioned this morning, we are all technologically savvy. We all have iPhones or something phones or brick phones or whatever. We all have a phone, and all of us can get wrapped up in that. You know, last night we were at the Williams family, and they were so gracious to put us up for the night. They probably had 35 people staying in their house last night, but they were so nice, and we had a great time. But, you know, I noticed at one point, before we played a card game, all of us were just on our phones or on our computers or on our iPads and tablets. And you know what? I can remember hearing from my dad when Andy Griffith would be on, don't you miss having those porch conversations? You know, you remember the episodes of Andy Griffith where at the end of the episode you'd see Barney and Andy and they're sitting on the porch and they're waving to people as they pass by. Someone said if you were to reboot the Andy Griffith Show, which I hope they never do, but if you were to reboot the Andy Griffith Show, at the end of the episode it would be them inside with the air conditioner on and they'd be tweeting or Instagramming or texting somebody saying, well, we got him, we got the guy we were chasing. We have lost communication. We have lost what communication is, haven't we? We have gone so far off, and I'm guilty of it too, because my grandfather was trying to tell me what to do one day, and I was finishing up a text message It may have even been about this youth day. It was an important text message. I was trying to finish up something, and my grandfather was in front of me, and I was just saying, yes, sir, yes, sir. I wasn't hearing what he said. And when I looked up, he was gone, and he was behind me, and he smacked me on the back of the head, and he said, hey, I'm talking. Put that away. When you listen to someone, is it easy to know that they're listening to you when they make eye contact? You know, I'll be honest, if all of you, while I'm talking, if all of you had your heads down the entire time, I'd have no idea how I was getting through to you, if I was even. Listening is such a two-way street, it requires eye contact. And the Bible talks about us that our parents have been giving, Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 7, have been giving us 4 different times a day, which covered all 4 parts of the day. When you lie us down, when you sit us, when you walk us by the way, and when you rise up. All 4 parts of the day have been covered. That's when a parent has the jurisdiction to teach and to tell you what they need you to learn. And so I need to be willing to listen at all points of the day because they're going to teach diligently according to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Also, if you go to Proverbs chapter 4 with me, Proverbs 4, we'll just read a few of these verses real quick. Proverbs 4, I love the book of Proverbs. I love what it stands for as far as a book of wisdom. It tries to help out so much. And really, if I were to call chapter 4 anything, if you were to ask me to title chapter 4 something, I would call it A Father's Plea to His Son to Be Wise. A father's plea to his son to be wise, because so much of the chapter 4 is a father begging his son to listen and to retain what he says. Read with me verse 1. Hear ye children the instruction of a father, attend to no understanding. Verse 2, I give you good doctrine. It's not something that's not good and not going to be beneficial for you. I give you good doctrine. Forsake ye not my law. You know, I was my father's son, verse 3, tender and only beloved in the sight of my mother. He taught me also. I've heard this before, and I'm telling you now, He taught me also. And said unto me, let thine heart retain my words, keep my commandments, and you'll live. Get wisdom, get understanding, forget it not, neither decline from the words of my mouth. Wisdom, verse 7, is the principal thing. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom with all thy getting, get understanding. Now watch verse 11. I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in the right paths. What's that mean? At this point, the Father is basically saying, I have done my job to teach you the right things. It is now up to you. And when you're leaving, when you goest, stay on the straight path. Stay on the path that you're supposed to. Don't even walk where the wicked walk, because they don't sleep unless they've done some mischief. And this is the same type of thing you might hear from your mom and dad. I don't want you hanging out with that person. They're crazy, and not in a good way. They're crazy. They're just insane. They just don't know what they're supposed to do, and I don't want you to be involved in that. And so if we're going to listen, we need to know that. We need to know that our parents are trying so hard to get us to stay on the right path. I want to tell you a story. There was a father who passed away, and he left a will. And these 2 sons, when they get the will said in the first part, I want you to put a barn in the back corner of our land. I want you to put it there. That's where I want the barn to be. And the sons, they were talking about it, and they said, you know, Dad was so wise. There's no other place we could put this barn but the back corner of our land. So they went and they put the barn there. And they come back again and they read the second part of the will. What's the next thing Dad's last will and testament wants us to do? Put a house in the middle of our land with the barn in the back. Wow, Dad was so smart. How is there no other way? There's no other place to put this barn and this house. We've got to put them where Dad said. Final part of the will. I want you to build a well behind the barn. I don't think Dad knew what he was talking about here. I mean, why would we put a well behind the barn where if we need water for our house, we got to go all the way with the buckets, get the water from the well, walk all the way back. We might spill all the water. We might spill every last bit as we're trying to get back from the house. I mean, it's a pretty good distance. I think really what we should do is, we've got the house here and the barn here. Let's put the well right in the middle of those two. You know, some people would say that the sons listened to 2 of the 3 things that the father said. They didn't listen at all. Because listening is not just when I'm agreeing with you, I'll listen. Listening is whatever you say is law, I will listen to it, I will do it, even if I don't think it's smart. People who work, you ever have a boss tell you to do something that you just thought was not smart? You ever have someone say, hey, I want you to get this done by this time, and you had other things on your plate that you needed to get done? Is it okay for me to look at him and say, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. I've got to get this done, so you can just come back later? I'd be out of there real quick. I'd be gone real quick. We need to know that listening is something that is not just voluntary. It's mandatory. We have to listen. Final point, final part of the plan. If you love your parents, you'll honor, you'll listen, and then that will cause you to obey. You'll obey your parents. You will understand what they want you to do, and that will cause you to obey and listen to them. Obey your parents in the Lord. Now please, think about it. I'm not up here telling you that if your parents say, hey, here's a beer, we want you to drink it, that you should do that. Why? Because that's not according to Ephesians 6 and verse 1, in the Lord. That's not your parents doing something in the Lord. If your parents ask you to do anything that contradicts God's will, I'm giving you permission, and I know anyone else in this room that is a preacher would give you permission to not listen to it. But that only means things that aren't in accordance with God's will. You can't try to find a loophole and say, well, I don't think that's what God meant there, and so I don't have to listen to mom and dad. No, only the things that are not in God's Word that we have to follow. And mom and dad try to get you to do something different, that's the only time you can say, no ma'am, no sir. Ephesians 6, 1 through 3 is a very good passage. I remember being 7 years old and mom and dad called me in and they said, you know what, you didn't listen to us recently. We want you to write Ephesians 6, 1 through 3 7 times. And I wrote those verses and they've never left my head since. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Why? Why do all of that? That it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. You know, when I think about my parents, and I think about that there's things going on in the brotherhood right now, some people I know very well who are willing to say when a child falls away, when a child goes astray, guess whose fault that automatically has to be? Well, it's got to be the parents. How could it not be the parents? Can I ask you a question? If someone were to come up to you and your child had gone astray and they were to say, what did you do wrong? How easy would it be to look at them and say, you know, I took my child to Bible class every single time that there was Bible class. I took them to Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night worship. I took them to vacation Bible school. I sent them off to multiple Christian camps. And after all of that, my child still fell away. We had devotionals at the evening. We would try to talk about the Bible. We tried to do everything we could to give them good, godly examples of friends so that they wouldn't be tempted to do the things that the Bible says are sin. And yet my son or daughter still fell away. So where were you, sir, ma'am, when the tears were being shed for my child going away? Where were you when you heard the arguments going on about my son or daughter telling me that they were leaving the church and I'm begging for them to stay? I know of parents who have said that very thing to me, that someone came up to them and said, what did you do wrong? I'm going to tell you right now, according to Proverbs 4, if you do what Proverbs 4 and verse 11 says of, I have taught thee in the way, and right now it's up to you, guess whose fault it is at that point? The child's. Because God didn't fail Adam and Eve. God was their father. He was not just a spiritual father to them. He was their creator. He was their father. And so the example applies to him as well. And if God can have two children fall away, it's not God's fault. The soul that sins, it shall die. Go with me as we close out to Ezekiel chapter 18. I love this verse because it proves the point that it is not the parent's fault. And if we don't follow this plan and we fall away, understand that this may be said of your mom and dad, that they failed you, that they're not going to be able to go to heaven because you're not a child of God anymore. I've heard that argument used as foolish as it may seem. I've heard it used in the pulpit. What does Ezekiel 19 and verse 20 say of chapter 18? Yet say ye, why? Doth not the sin of the Son bear the iniquity of the Father? When the Son hath done that which is lawful and right, and hath kept all my statutes, and hath done them, he shall surely live. Notice, please, verse 20. The soul that sinneth, it, not the parents, it shall die. The Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. Young people, it is up to you to go to heaven. It is not up to your parents to on Judgment Day say, it's okay, let him in. It's up to you, and it's up to me. And so when we think about having the most updated edition of our faith, when we think about having the most updated opportunity to love our parents and to be with them and to help them in any way possible, we need to remember these four things. We need to love our parents. We need to honor our parents. We need to listen to them, and we need to obey them. I promise you, as you get older in life and you think back of certain times where you didn't listen to your mom and dad, as I'm thinking now, and I know there will be several more times where I realize, wow, mom and dad were really smart. They really did know what they were talking about. I promise you, if you try so hard right now to have this plan in mind, you won't have as many moments as so many people regrettably have. Thank you so much for your kind attention.